Dear YouTube censors, I'm here to defend the Holocaust, not deny it. I'm not a Nazi, not a fascist, not an anti-Semite Marxist, not evil totalitarian or any sort like that. I do realise that this video will trigger the algorithm because of the words I'll be saying, but you please bear in mind that in order to discuss this topic, I need to say those words, obviously, so just bear that in mind. And the purpose of the video is to educate, but also to discuss history, debate it, and defend history. Because if we don't learn from the mistakes of the past, we're doomed to repeat them. So just please bear that in mind. So I've got a question from one of my subscribe stars, or at least somebody who sent me money at some point last year, called Ted. Ted is a Holocaust denialist. He doesn't believe in the Holocaust. He's questioning it. And so the question that he's got here is related to that. I'm going to read out his question now. I'm going to read it out in the Hitler voice that I do. And the reason why, it's not because I'm immature. It's not because I want to disparage Ted any more so than he already is doing it to himself. It's because I want to protect myself so that the audio of me saying what he's saying doesn't get taken out of context and used somewhere else to say that I'm an anti-Semite and whatever else. So that's why I'm doing it. It's not immaturity, as some have claimed. It's to protect myself. Dear Tick, I found the premise of your video Hitler's Socialism convincing. National Socialism, racial socialism, is pretty similar to Marxist socialism and works as poorly as an economic system. I've ordered The Vampire Economy to read for myself. While I am thankful for your perspective-altering video, most of this message is about Holocaust denial. It sounds like you're presently working on a video about that subject, so I intend to reach out before that's done. I found the following video to make a compelling argument that there weren't gas chambers used to kill concentration camp inmates. The Soviets poorly altered some of the camp buildings to help push that story, and the overall death camp was wildly inflated for propaganda purposes. I know it's long, but it appears well researched and free of manipulative music. Also, I'd like to direct you to the following free treasure trove of contrarian Holocaust history books. You don't have to accept their conclusion, but please survey some of the more scholarly works on Holocaust denial. In Hitler's Socialism, you feature content from a video about ideologically undermining Holocaust denial. It's certainly true that racial socialism as an ideology would seek to remove the Jews in their borders, but it's jumping to a conclusion to assume that meant a murderous Holocaust. Hitler had encouraged Jews to emigrate from the beginning. His administration increased pressure to emigrate over several years. There was even a board game about sending the Jews back to Palestine. The Havara Agreement, which actually emigrated Jews to Palestine, and there was the cancelled Madagascar Plan. With the start of the war, the remaining Jews were put into forced labour camps, partly to address labour shortages with workers sent to the front, and because the Bolshevik uprising had been about half Jewish, even though they were 3% of Imperial Russia. So this was to help prevent communists from undermining Hitler from within, not that Hitler himself wouldn't want to isolate them for ideological reasons too. So, getting rid of the Jews doesn't necessarily mean mass murder. Also, in the video it is claimed that Holocaust deniers know full well that the Holocaust happened, 6 million dead version I presume, and they were only denying it to attack Marxists. At least in my case, that is not it at all. I genuinely found the linked above Eric Hunt's video convincing, along with other videos in that series. It really looks like a cartoonishly evil exaggeration of the forced labour camps is being leveraged by Jewish interest groups. The Holocaust 6 million myth has been used to extract hundreds of billions of dollars out of Germany to establish Israel at the dire expense of the Palestinians, to pass laws in Western countries making it illegal to question this source of power, to make Jewish children feel like white genocide via multiculturalism is justified, and as a source of sympathy for just about anything Jewish activists want. Would there be so much foreign aid from America to Israel, so much tolerance of Israeli nuclear proliferation, so many sole American UN veto votes, and so much patience with Israel stealing state secrets and sending them to China, if there weren't any Holocaust sympathy? Isn't it telling that a questionable story that happens to give one party so much power is primarily pushed by that party? Isn't it sick that young children in school have this exploitative belief put in their heads with propaganda videos featuring horror music and piles of dead bodies that are actually Dresden bombing victims?
I deny the 6 million Holocaust because I think that's what the evidence shows. It matters to me because I think it's a tool used to exploit people. Whether or not it makes the Soviets look worse never comes to mind. Your video said that some countries ban Holocaust denial because Marxist professors aren't very good at refuting Holocaust denial, because they deny that Hitler was socialist, and if he were racial socialist that would explain a motivation for a 6 million Holocaust. 1. As mentioned previously, you don't need to murder people to get a racial state. 2. Having a motivation doesn't mean you act on it. 3. I've never seen a discussion of Holocaust factuality that involved a discussion of whether Hitler was socialist. 4. I don't think the reasons for banning Holocaust denial involve the failure of specifically Marxist professors. It is illogical and immoral to have the state declare what historical facts are true under penalty of law. No other historical facts are regulated by legislators in this way. Everything else is allowed the right of free inquiry and debate, except for Operation Keelhaul, Hess, and numerous other topics. Okay, this unenlightened tyranny is only possible through mass childhood indoctrination, a decline in critical thinking skills, and the outsized power of Jewish interest groups. I say that the reason why some countries ban Holocaust denial is because of the alarming power Jewish lobbyists have over industrialized nations. Thank you for reading my message. I hope that you will please give the evidence for Holocaust denial a serious consideration, especially before making a video about it. When we're taught to believe something scary as school children, it can impede us as adults from critically evaluating evidence. There will be a temptation to look for an easy dismissal of things that we don't want to believe, so I encourage you to be skeptical not only towards a reviled minority position, but also towards sources that affirm what we were conditioned to believe. Thank you.
So clearly Ted has got his views. So what I'm going to do, to answer this, I'm going to concentrate on the video that he linked to. Now, I'm not going to be able to play it, and there's reasons for that. And you'll find out later in the video why. It's not just because of YouTube copyright or whatever, although that is a factor. It's not even just about that. So, but the video is titled The Madonic, I think I say the name, Madonic Gas Chamber Myth, and then by Eric Hunt 2014. And it's actually number 3 of 7 videos in a series. And I watched that one, and I also watched the second one, which was on Treblinka, which I'm also going to discuss as well. It's all on BitChute. Well, those 2 are on BitChute. I couldn't find the other ones. If you do go and find this, I'm not sure if I'll leave the links yet. I'm going to have to play that by ear. It depends how YouTube reacts to the video. If you do go on BitChute and you do find these videos, you may need to use a VPN. I had to use a VPN to say I was in a different country to get through it because, yeah. This sort of material is being censored, so bear that in mind. So when I went and watched this video, I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised because normally, anyone's been on the internet for more than 5 minutes, you'll know that when the Nazis, say go and watch these videos, or haha, this didn't happen, here's why, and they usually link to a few different videos. The number one they always seem to link to is Hitler, the Greatest Story Never Told, which is also on BitChute. Again, I don't know if I'll link to that. But Hitler, the Greatest Story Never Told, if you've not watched it, I'm only halfway through it because it's terrible. But so the Nazis, what they tend to do, or the denialists, what they do is they say, okay, the mainstream narrative is wrong, and the documentaries that you see on TV, what they do is it's all propaganda, and they play violins as they show you pictures, and it just makes you emotionally invest in it, even though there's no scientific evidence. That's their argument. So what do the Nazis do? They make Hitler, the Greatest Story Never Told, and it's all dramatic music or sad violin music when they're talking about Hitler, and yeah, it's awful. It's absolutely, and it's not convincing. I had to watch it in half-an-hour chunks because my brain was melting out my ears. So it's terrible. So I was expecting, when I was going into this video, the Madonic, however you say it, gas chamber thing, by Eric Hunt, I was expecting more of the same. I was expecting just propaganda, and it's not actually like that. I'll give it credit where credit's due. It's not as bad as Hitler, the Greatest Story Never Told. In terms of the presentation of it, it was actually quite reasonable in the sense of he was calm, he was collected, and he spoke, and he just laid down what he considered the facts were. He was questioning the mainstream narrative. Now, there are bits where he goes a bit further than that and starts talking about Zionism and the rabbis and stuff like that, which I don't agree with. But on a whole, in terms of presentation and style, I actually, I'll give it its due. I think it did a good job in that sense. It also presented an argument which was pretty, I wouldn't say convincing, because I was thinking critically anyway, as I always do, but I would say, yeah, okay, that's a reasonable argument to have. The problem, of course, is that it goes a bit too far. So let me explain what the argument is, and I'll talk about bits as we go through it. So it starts off talking about the numbers. Now, at the beginning, the Soviets said that in the Majdanek concentration camp, the original figure that the Soviets guessed was 2 million Jews got gassed. That turned out to be false. It has been revised down. It is now between, I think the last two estimates were 50,000 or 78,000. So it's come down quite dramatically. But the official narrative still says 50, 78,000, something like that. Somebody like myself would reasonably just go, well, the numbers are always disputed. We don't even know how many people were in Rommel's Africa Corps to the exact figure. We're not sure about Stalingrad, 6th Army. We're not sure about the 62nd Army. You name any unit basically in World War II, and you're going to be finding discrepancies in the numbers and stuff like that. So the numbers are always disputed. So, okay, yeah, it's a dramatic drop, but just because it is a drop doesn't mean that therefore zero got killed. A person like me would say, well, they have revised it down. That shows that historians normally do revise history, which is what they do. That's their job. Eric Hunt in the video then says, no, it's proved that the revisionist, as in denialist literature, is proving the narrative wrong, right? So it's saying that the pressure of the revisionist historians, the denialist historians, are putting enough pressure on it that it's slowly but surely the truth is really being revealed. And no, not really. It then says, because of the denialist literature. So originally they said that there were 7 gas chambers. It has now been officially admitted that there were only 2. And then on top of that, the remaining 2 are now being disputed by the revisionists and saying no, they're saying they're not gas chambers either. They're saying that they are disinfection chambers or facilities, and that because the Jews were infested with lice, they needed to be, their clothes had to be disinfected, their hair had to be shaved to get rid of the lice. And in the video it shows how the Allies also did similar sorts of things. They shaved heads and they took off people's clothes to get them in the disinfection chambers in the Allied camps, and did the same sort of thing. And it makes the case that if you imagine a long building, the official narrative is that, let's say this is the entrance. So the official narrative is that the Jews go through here and they, I'm not sure the exact order, but let's say they declothe, then they get their head shaved, then they end up in the showers, then they end up incinerated, in that order. Well, between the shower room and the incineration, or the end of it basically, there is a extra bit which was added on after the war by the Soviets. This is what Eric Hunt says. And so what he says is, if you take that away, there's a gap between, let's say, the incineration room and the shower room. And he says this was actually the original entrance, and he shows the original blueprints of the building, and it says entrance in German. And so his argument is, rather than going in this way, they actually came in the other way. And so it makes more sense that they took the clothes off to be incinerated, they came through, they had a shower, then they had the haircut and whatever else, and they got through and were given new clothes at the end, and thus went into the camp. So his argument is, it's actually a work camp, and this is perfectly normal, and it's perfectly fine. My question is, well, how do you know that that was the way just because there is a gap doesn't mean they didn't go in that way either. So yeah, it may have originally, because don't forget the Holocaust wasn't pre-planned. They were doing it ad hocly as things went forward. And so, when they designed these buildings earlier on, they may have made that the entrance. And they may have made it so that it was that way round. And then when they were like, okay, let's turn this into a gas chamber or whatever, we'll just send the Jews the other way through the exit, right? So just because this extra bit was on, put on the building by the Soviets, doesn't necessarily mean you have, it doesn't say that you can't go through that way as well. So it doesn't disprove. It may show, and thinking critically again, it may show that, hey, we need extra, workmen in the camp. Okay, we'll send them through the normal way. Oh no, now we've got another train load. We actually don't need extra workers. We'll send it through the death way. Let's put it that way. Maybe that was the case. Now he does also say there's a few documentaries which show the inside of the one of the rooms, which is that's the shower room, and it shows the door, and it's like it's a TV documentary, so all the music's playing, and it's like this is the gas chamber. And Eric Hunt says, well, why don't they show the wall on this side? Right, the camera's kind of pointing this way, and they don't show you the wall over here. And the wall over here is where these windows are, and these windows, and he puts his camera up to the windows and says, these windows are dead flimsy. You could, probably punch your way out. So if this is the gas chamber, you can imagine people are quite easily capable of getting out of that. And there's other things as well. There's things like that throughout it. And what he also shows is that one room's got a hole in the ceiling, which is supposedly where they drop the pellets down. And then another room is where the showers are. So that's a separate room entirely. Then there's another room, which is where people were supposedly gassed again. And there's a hole in the ceiling, but it's a different type of hole, and it looks like it was done after the war. And it was just chiseled into the thing, and then it's since been shown that wasn't used as the gas chamber. And then what he says is there's another documentary, which the documentary used clips of each of the different rooms to say this one room was the gas chamber. So they didn't just have photos of one room like this room here. They took several photos of different rooms and went, okay, this is how it all worked. And it was like, no, you've used several different rooms. So there's questions relating to that. It also says that there were 5 small ovens in the camp, and the claim was that they could burn 2,000 bodies a day. And he says, well, no, they were actually, they're just one person at a time. There's even working around the clock, that's not possible. Of course, they didn't just use the ovens. They also burned bodies in open pits. So it wasn't an either or, it was both. It was the combination of the pits and the ovens that would allow them to burn however many bodies per day. So when the Holocaust deniers say, oh, the ovens weren't big enough, or there weren't enough of them to burn this many bodies, what they're doing is forgetting about the open pits. And that's where they're going wrong. He then shows that there were beds, and the claim is that the Jews were forced to sleep on these beds, and he says no, they were probably cribs for babies. He says that the camp made shoes, which is why there was lots of shoes in the camp. So it's not necessarily victims' shoes, it's just shoes. So the idea being that they took the shoes off, threw them into one area, and then got new shoes, actually clogs, elsewhere. And so he makes the case that all this is casting doubt on the mainstream narrative. He says people definitely died in the camp, but he says that this was from disease and harsh treatment, not through gas or genocide. He then called out all the Jews. He called out Zionism, and he says it was all Jewish propaganda. And he also says that it was a lying Jewish rabbi, and I'm quoting there, and he called him out, and to me this is a bit too much. Like, just because the mainstream narrative is wrong, perhaps in some instances, and you know, with the numbers or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that they're lying. Like, humans make mistakes, and part of the human literature, like, you know, I've been doing the Battle of Stalingrad. I've been saying, look, I think some of these historians are wrong here. Some of them are right. Some of them, you know, in different instances. So Glantz is right over here. Glantz is wrong over here. That doesn't mean he's lying. I'm sure I've made mistakes. I'm pretty certain I have. I've called myself out on it. I've made videos saying I've made mistakes in that video. That's not me lying. That's just me making mistakes or getting bits wrong, or new information has come to light which has revealed a mistake. And so there's a difference between lying and deliberately telling a falsehood, as opposed to mistakes, getting things wrong, being human, etc. At Stalingrad, there's one guy with the rifle and one guy with the bullets, right? If somebody's saying that and they don't realise that they're saying the lie and that it didn't actually happen, then that's not a lie. That's somebody just being wrong. So the supposed lying Jewish rabbi might actually just be wrong. If the rabbi thinks he's telling the truth, you know, I would say, well, that means he's not telling a lie. He might be wrong, but he's not telling a lie. He's not deliberately falsifying the history. He's just being wrong. Whereas Eric Hunt's like, even though he applies it to himself, he says, no, they're definitely lying. And there's a load of logical inconsistencies throughout the video like that. He says that the Holocaust belief, and he says is a Jewish cult, to unite Jews around the world. He says that the Israeli military go to Majdanek to be brainwashed, and so that they can fight and slaughter Palestinians. That's his words, not mine. And he's happy to call out the Dresden bombing as a Holocaust. So the Dresden bombing is a Holocaust. Obviously Coventry isn't. Obviously Liverpool, Birmingham, Rotterdam, you know, all the places in Eastern Europe which got destroyed. None of them are real Holocaust, but the Dresden bombing clearly is, right? So, I need to do a video on that. As I said at the beginning, I think that video was well presented. I don't know if it was it would stand up to scrutiny, but it was okay. So I was like, right, I'm curious. So that was number 3 of 7 documentaries. I decided to go back and watch number 2, which is the only other one I could find. And this one is about Treblinka. It's titled The Treblinka Archaeological Hoax by Eric Hunt, 2014. And I just want to point out here, so there was a TV documentary done by Channel 5 and the Smithsonian Channel on Treblinka, and the lady who was the main star in this was an archaeologist. I believe her name was Carol Coles. Basically, this documentary was not done very well. And that's me saying that, but also other people online saying that. Not just Holocaust deniers, but actual normal viewers who are like, you kind of messed this up. So let me explain that one first, because then it will give context to this. So that in that video, Carol goes to Treblinka, and her objective is to try and find the pits where the bodies were put. And the reason why is because they haven't really been discovered, or they hadn't been discovered when this was done. So she goes with an archaeological team, and there are 2 camps at Treblinka. There's Treblinka 1, Treblinka 2, and she's trying to look around this area, and she does an overview from the air, and she's trying to find these things, and she goes, oh, there's some discrepancies here. So she goes to a Polish Christian graveyard, and there's actually, in one shot, you can see that they're digging over here, you know, in underneath their canopy, digging away at the ground, and there's actually a cross. I'm trying to get it right. There's like a cross about here in the frame. So it's like, yeah, you're digging in a gravesite, so of course you're going to find bodies. So then, of course, they find bodies, and then they go to Treblinka 2. What they do, they ask the head rabbi of Poland to give them permission to dig, and he says basically no. He says you can, but as soon as you find bones, you've got to stop, and you've got to recover them, and you can't pick them up or anything like that. They're not to be disturbed because of religious reasons. And it's like, so they're not actually allowed to dig. So what she does is she goes to one part of the camp, digs down, doesn't find anything except for a shark tooth, which is a fossil. So from the time that Poland was underwater. So she fails there. Then she does another dig, and they find 2 tiles. And these tiles have got a star on it. And they mistakenly believe it's the Star of David, but it's actually not. Or at least this is what Eric Hunt says. He thinks it's actually just a Polish tile maker. But they get these 2 up, these 2 tiles, and then they say, oh, well, there we go. We found evidence of the gas chambers. So now we'll just dig, we'll cover up the ground again. And that's basically, and it's like, that's not evidence. And so what, the documentary, the TV documentary itself was a load of garbage. And there was even a scene where they get a historian in, and then they get some maps from the survivors, and Carol herself says these maps don't, they're all different, they don't correspond to each other. And the historian's like, yes, and that's why the Holocaust denialists are all having a field day. And then it's like, okay, so they really didn't sell it. So essentially this TV documentary was what we would call low-hanging fruit. And so Eric Hunt was, rightly at the time going to call it out, and so were the other Nazis. And so that's what they actually did. I shouldn't say Nazi because I don't know if Eric was a Nazi, but I'll just call him Holocaust denier. So Eric Hunt, as a Holocaust denier, was obviously quick to react to that. So there's numerous things he called out the documentary for. So they showed a famous photo of a Jewish boy and his parents or whatever being taken out of the Warsaw ghetto, but then he says there's no evidence that the Jews of Warsaw were taken to Treblinka. I think that's a minor thing, because it's like, yeah, we don't have a million photos of what was happening. So it does kind of make sense to use some that may not be linked to that particular camp. So I think that's just a minor point, but he says that. Then he says he actually shows how the TV documentary used footage from the Majdanek concentration camp as though it was at Treblinka. And then according to the Eric Hunt's video, there were no barbed wire fences at Treblinka, but on the TV documentary, the host is shown to be stood behind the barbed wire for a photo shoot. And even then, the video says that Caroline was sandwiched between an open gate in order to make it look as though she was imprisoned. So it was completely fake. So again, they dropped the ball on this one. They do say in the documentary, though, that, this is actually because the gas chambers were destroyed at Treblinka. Yeah, I can't get my words out. Treblinka. They had to go to Majdanek. So they actually do say that in the documentary. So I think we can forgive them for that. But as it said, Eric Hunt calls it out. He criticises the fact that they used darkened and desaturated footage of the railway ties at Treblinka in order to give them a more sinister look than in reality. And he's actually been to Treblinka, and he shows the video footage of him walking along these tiles, and it's actually bright and just a typical day. So then he calls it manipulative film techniques, saying that, quote, they make you believe in their propaganda like a horror film. And then he goes on to say that the mainstream narrative is that 900,000 Jews were killed at Treblinka 2, but denialists or revisionists say that Treblinka 2 was a transit camp, and that they doubt even that 900,000 Jews were sent to Treblinka. Revisionists, denialists, whatever you want to call them, their narrative is that rather than being death camps, they were transit camps, and that Hitler or the Nazi regime was sending the Jews through these camps to the east as a resettlement program. And this goes back to what Ted said about, okay, just because they wanted to remove the Jews, which is what I've proved in my Hitler Socialism video, just because they want to remove the Jews doesn't necessarily mean that they wanted to kill them. Okay, except we'll come back to that, actually. So then it shows, we will come back to that. It then shows several eyewitnesses, and he actually has video footage of them saying that they went through Treblinka. They either went into the camp for a couple of hours or whatever, and then were sent onwards. to Medonic, however you say it. And then he concludes, well, there you go, it's proof that it's a transit camp. My critical thinking skills, I would say, well, obviously the survivors aren't going to be saying that they got gassed at Treblinka, because if they were gassed at Treblinka, they wouldn't have survived. So, yeah, the survivors are going to have gone through the camp, or maybe they were at the camp and survived it, or they had gone through it. They're not going to, otherwise they wouldn't have survived. So clearly, that's not evidence that there weren't gassings. That's just evidence that these survivors were transited through the camp. So it doesn't prove that there was gas chambers. It doesn't disprove there was gas chambers. All it proves is that, yes, some of them were sent through the camp. The video then says that many of the claims about Treblinka came from one guy who was, quote, this is him saying this, a Zionist Jew who says he was interned at Treblinka. But Eric Hunt claims that this guy didn't have access to the extermination area and he didn't see the structures that killed the Jews, and therefore he concludes that the models and drawings that this guy made were based on his imagination and hearsay, and thus this wouldn't stand up in court. He says that, yes, some small burial pits probably did exist due to prisoners dying in transit, but the aerial photos taken by Caroline's crew that supposedly prove that the mass burial pits were there don't really do it. That's why he says that Caroline saw this evidence, and then, he asked what did she decide to do. She then decided to go to a known Christian cemetery to do the digging. So that's why she did that, because the idea is that, well, they couldn't find the actual mass pits, so they went south to a Christian cemetery to dig up the bones there. The implication being this is all propaganda. They're digging up, in this case, 40 human bones, which isn't even enough to make a human body. And then she also, at this point, she digs up 40 bones and then says, oh yeah, we've got plenty of evidence now there was a mass grave. And then she puts the dirt back, and it's like, and then she cries. And then the video narrator calls this, quote, emotional manipulation, not science. And, quote, that's how they get you to believe in the official story. So as I say, this documentary, the TV documentary, really messed up. And I agree that this is a bit silly. But what he's actually doing here is he's dismissing the evidence of eyewitnesses. And, yeah, okay, Caroline wasn't able to spot the pits from the air or whatever, but that doesn't disprove that there weren't any. It just proves that Caroline and the TV documentary really dropped the ball there. So again, that doesn't disprove it, doesn't prove it, but it's kind of like, yeah, I agree that the TV documentary wasn't great, but you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I would say. He then says that the official view is that Treblinka 1 was a work camp which used diggers to excavate the ground and bury the bodies. And then he shows that there is, in fact, a nearby modern quarry that's being used to this day nearby. So he's suggesting that the excavations weren't done to bury bodies, but were actually legitimate resource gatherings. Then what happens is in the TV documentary, they talk about Vasily Grossman, the famous guy who was a journalist for the Soviets, and he gave an account of Treblinka called The Hell of Treblinka, and Grossman says that the pits there was these massive pits and the bodies were being burned, and then the ashes were scattered along a road by nearby villagers and children. And he says that when cars and trucks drive over the road, he says that the ghosts of the dead can be heard whispering in the breeze or whatever. And so it's obviously, it's a poetic, it's poetic license basically. But then obviously Eric Hunt says clearly this isn't good. He points out that the Jewish journalist Grossman wrote fiction books, and then the evidence of the large pits that Grossman alleged have not been found at Medonic. and Caroline's images from the sky also don't show them, so thus he concludes that the video is all fiction and that it's just all been made up to get you emotionally manipulated. Okay, Grossman was a journalist and he was also a fiction writer, and thus a bit of poetic license can be done. It's not necessarily done for propaganda, but okay, he's got a point there, I guess. Then the TV documentary shows Caroline walking around finding small bones all over the ground, and Eric Hunt says that wait a second, and he shows a clip from a German documentary where modern day Jews are traveling to Treblinka to illegally spread the ashes of their recently deceased relatives who have been cremated elsewhere. So then he says that, well, if they're pouring ashes over the area, you're going to find small bits of ash and bones and whatever else. He later says that, okay, maybe that's not actually the case, because just one evidence, there's only one guy we know of actually doing that. So, but we'll come back to that. But then he says that what should happen is that they should just excavate the area, find the mass graves, and be done with it. But then he shows that the head Jewish rabbi of Poland he's actually in the video refusing to allow the excavation, and Caroline is there saying, hey, can we dig this up, and the head Jewish rabbi is like, no. So, but that to me says that, wait a second, if it's some sort of grand Jewish conspiracy, which is what the denialists are saying, then how come you've got Caroline saying, hey, I want to excavate, and the head Jewish rabbi going, no, I don't think so? Well, that shows that they're not working together, because if they were working together, they wouldn't have even asked this question in the first place. They would have just said, oh, by the way, we can't do this because it's not right. So the fact that they went to the trouble of actually asking the guy and he was like, no, shows that it's not a grand conspiracy. Or if it is, it's really poorly done. But then Eric says, well, the reason why a true excavation is not allowed is because of the, quote, Zionist power structure, because he says that the bodies are not there, and he says that they're covering up the big lie. They're covering up their big lie. Well, no, the TV documentary shows that, like, Caroline's asking for permission, and the other guy's like, no. So it's not a power structure. Why would they do that? If it was like, hey, I'm going to do this massive conspiracy, you wouldn't put that scene in there. So that doesn't really say it. But then he says, this is Eric Hunt again, he says that that a true excavation would exonerate the German people and expose the lie of the Holocaust. And this is where the denialists are saying that Western civilization, and especially the Germans, because they're definitely the same, because the Germans embrace liberalism, which, as in the old-fashioned classical liberalism, which they never did, and thus they are part of the Western world. And I would go, not really. I would argue not, but okay. But then this idea is that they're going to exonerate the German people. It's not necessarily the German people who are are committing this crime of the Holocaust. It was the National Socialists. Big part of that was the German nation, obviously, but it's not because they were German necessarily. It was National Socialism. So it's not. So what you're saying here, what you're doing is conflating the two. It's kind of like the Russians. The Russians are like, oh, you can't criticize Russia. So when I say, oh, the Soviets committed a war crime, like Operation Keelhaul, they go, no, you're criticizing Russia. No, I'm not. I'm criticizing the Soviet Union, which is a different thing. I'm not criticizing the Soviet people. I'm not criticizing the Russian people. I'm not even criticizing the Russian state. I'm I am blaming the Soviet Union. I'm concentrating on the Soviet Union, the state of the Soviet Union. What this guy is doing as well is saying the Germans and the Nazis are the same thing, and it's not true necessarily. Obviously, a lot of Germans were Nazis at the time, but that's not the same thing. So when we say the Nazis were bad, we're not saying that the German people are bad. And we're not even saying the German government's bad, which it is. All governments are bad. But that doesn't mean that the German people are bad, right? British government's terrible. That doesn't mean that the British people are terrible, necessarily, although some of them are. So he's saying that a real excavation would exonerate the German people and expose the lie of the Holocaust. No, maybe if it was a lie, okay, fine, but it's not going to exonerate the German people. The German people are already exonerated. It's not their fault that this happened. It was the National Socialists in Germany that did it. So you got to make that separation there. The people of today are not guilty for the crimes of the past. I'm not guilty of what, just because Edward I murdered half the Jews in England, that doesn't mean that I'm guilty. Just because I live in England. That's not how it works. And that did happen, by the way. Look it up. So then it shows Caroline's team digging in the area where they find the shark teeth for when Poland was underwater a million years ago. And then the TV documentary then concludes that the Nazi cleanup operation was effective and that all the evidence has since been removed. Right, so she digs in this one little area, finds some shark teeth, and then concludes that the entire thing was super effective and therefore the evidence is removed. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, it's literally like, as I say, low-hanging fruit. It messed up massively. They say about the shaving of the hair, and then Eric Hunt says that this is because they were trying to protect the people from the deadly lice, and he shows footage of that. But what he actually does is ignore the elephant in the room, which is the idea of, okay, why were they infected with lice in the first place? Right? Because thinking critically, why were they infected with lice? Now, obviously, the Nazis would go, it's because they're dirty and whatever else. My argument would be, yeah, because you force them out of their homes at gunpoint, you put them on trains, all together cramped, and you were transiting them around different camps and whatever else, and ghettos and no matter what, and they were therefore getting infected. So the elephant in the room is, clearly it's not right to take people out of their homes by force, send them to ghettos, send them onto the trains and pushing them out into the camps. That isn't justified. So that is the elephant in the room there. It's like, well, they were infected by lice because the Nazis did all that. But none of that's mentioned. It then talks about the RIF soap, which the Jews mistakenly believed was made of Jewish fat, because instead of RIF, it was they believed it was RJF, which in German would stand for pure Jewish fat. But that's not the case. The I meant industrial. It was industrial soap. So that was a lie, or the Jews believed that, so therefore they're not lying. They actually believed that it was that. So again, if it's not a lie if you believe that you're telling the truth. So this isn't a lie, it's a mistake. And it's also part of the history of it. Like, they mistakenly believed it was made of Jewish fat. That is part of the historic, like, they believed that at the time, they believe it now perhaps, they believed that. That is part of the historical record. They're not lying, they believed that, even if they were wrong at the time and now as well. Then, having found those two tiles in the dirt, Caroline concludes that they found evidence of the gas chambers and so buries it all again. Which, admittingly is ridiculous. That's just stupid. And, in my notes here, I put the TV documentary is clearly not a good one, and it's just giving the denialists an opportunity to slam them down, which it absolutely is. But both the TV documentary and the denialist video both say that the Earth at Treblinka needs to be opened up to prove or disprove the evidence of the death pits or the gas chambers. So both the TV documentary and Eric Hunt, and even me, are now going to say, actually, yeah, they need to do a proper excavation and proper investigation, because if we haven't found those pits, bear in mind this is in 2014, if not earlier, so maybe they've done it since then. I to be honest, didn't look, but assuming they've not done that, they need to actually do that. And I understand why they haven't, but I would still say, and the TV documentary said, and the denialists are saying, come on, it's obviously impeding an investigation here. So they kind of do, like for the historical record and to really shut the denialists up, they really need to open the ground and see if these pits exist and where they were and prove it once and for all. And I mean, I can see it from both sides, but I do think that ideally that would need to happen at some point if it hasn't happened already. So it's my take. You can disagree and you can argue. I don't mind. See what happens there. So Eric Hunt then goes to another site near the camps where he finds horse bones. And he then says that many people come to Treblinka believing that these bones are human remains, when he says that they're actually often animal bones. He then says, and I'm going to quote this, and so I'm going to put the Hitler voice on, "We won't find the truth about this gravesite with Zionist holoscammers impeding a true forensic investigation. The official myth is that almost every Jew sent to Treblinka II was immediately gassed, but there were several Jews who claim that they have been transferred through Treblinka to other camps along with thousands of other Jews." The problem is that they may have been going through Treblinka 1, not Treblinka 2, so that doesn't prove or disprove anything. It just shows that some of the survivors survived, but I've already mentioned that. But I do like the fact that, you know, they're not necessarily holo scammers or Zionist holo scammers. It's not that at all. It's they don't want graves being dug up. Now I understand, obviously, yeah, they are kind of impeding a true investigation, I guess. But that doesn't mean it's a grand conspiracy. It just means that there's people, you know, these are human graves, these are human remains, so you have to be sensitive to that. And then Eric Hunt says that he makes the connection between Channel 5 and the Smithsonian Channel and the Jews. They're all in it together, obviously. And he says that both of these channels were owned by a Jew at the time, and this was true. I think it was Murray Rothstein. He might have a different name, and he's now dead. And they were also working with the US government, the implication being that they're all together. And then he says that the Jews owned monopolies that control the media and are using that power to influence everyone and get you to believe anything. He then says that people who oppose the Holocaust, and he calls it a lie, are beaten, imprisoned and financially bankrupted in order to suppress them and keep the lie going. And he compared this to a religious persecution similar to Galileo, who was persecuted by the Catholic Church for believing that the earth revolved around the sun. So I would say that the argument presented by Eric Hunt was actually reasonably well presented. It was obviously much better than the TV documentary in the Treblinka video, but there are flaws in it, and I can understand why Ted was somewhat convinced by this. And he said, Ted said he generally found the linked video, Eric Hunt video, convincing, along with other videos in that series. And he says it really looks like a cartoonishly evil exaggeration of the forced labour camps is being leveraged by Jewish interest groups. And so you can sort of, hopefully if you've listened to what I've said here, you can kind of see that. And you can also, if you watch the documentary, you might, thinking critically, you might, but oh yeah, okay, fine. The problem, and this is where I want to sort of criticise Ted here, because Ted only asked me this question last year. One of the things that you should always do in history is not only think critically and always ask the question, but is this really the case? But you should also, when you ask that question, you should also think, wait a second, what is the author saying? What are they doing? Why are they saying it? Let's see what their history is, and so on and so forth. And basically then, who is Eric Hunt? What did he do? What is he about? Has anybody else started to talk about him and question him or anything else like that? And so that's what I thought. Okay, Eric Hunt's presented this video. It's well presented. It's got an argument, so on and so forth. Let's see now if there's some sort of evidence that might contradict Eric Hunt's videos. And so I did a quick Google search. and this is why I want to criticise Ted a little bit here. Ted, you didn't need to ask me this question. You could have just literally gone on YouTube, Google and done this yourself. It's not hard. And you would have probably found this Questioning the Holocaust, the End of the Line. Now, this is obviously on archive dot whatever, but this was coming from Eric Hall's own website, which was questioningtheholocaust.com. And this is Eric Hall back in 2017, I think. So this is before Ted asked his question. This is Eric Hall coming out and saying he's no longer a Holocaust denier and he's taken back everything he said. Or not everything he said, but most of the things he said. So I'm going to read a lot of this, not all of it. I probably will link to it. If not, you can actually find this. It's quite easy to find. If you put in Eric Hunt questioning the Holocaust, you should be able to find it. Or End of the Line. But let me read through some of this now. Oh, and actually, I'm going to read it with the Hitler voice. Just because. And that's, again, this is not an having to go at Eric Hunt. I just don't want, he's saying about, I have devoted a great deal of my life to investigating what is known as the Holocaust. And I've endured months of imprisonment. I don't want to be saying, I've endured 18 months of imprisonment, because I don't want to be saying that, because I don't want it to be seen as if it's me and then have my audio taken out of context. So that's the reason why. It's not because I'm disparaging Eric Hunt here. It's because I want to protect myself. So he says he's endured 18 months of imprisonment, overwhelming hardships, and lived life as an outcast due to my activism as a Holocaust skeptic. All along, I claimed I was looking for the truth and was out to tell the truth. I have determined I have reached the end of the line in the extent relevant research in the central issue of the Holocaust denial debate is able to go. I have come to what can be called a conclusion regarding the central issue of Holocaust denial, which is, and this is all in bold, here it is, where did the Jews declared unable to work, small children and the elderly, etc., sent to Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka, Belzec, etc., go if they were not gassed at these sites? So that's the question that he's asking the Holocaust denialists. They're saying that Hitler or the Nazi regime were sending the Jews to the east, right? Like similar to the Madagascar plan or the Siberia plan, we're sending them all the way to the east to get them out of Germany. And these camps were therefore transit camps. Okay, so where did the Jews go? If they, those that were unable to work, where did they go if they weren't gassed at those sites? So this is a former Holocaust denier asking this question. He says, through the years, I have asked several prominent revisionists this question. The most common response is, I don't know. Does this answer sound like it would win a public debate, let alone get laughed out of an auditorium? Instead, it is undoubtedly a losing position, and this is precisely why revisionists have not and are, without additional miraculous earth-shattering new data, unable to ever win the Holocaust denial debate. I have read most of what has been written in regards to this central question. The revisionist answer is the equivalent of I don't know, along with some insinuations that some transports we know were indeed sent to the Russian East, mostly Minsk, Belarus and the Baltic states, that they must have first been transited through these camps. This weak and really non-existent data is not good enough. Often some of these claimed transports to the Russian East through these camps happened before the extermination camps claimed transit camps were even opened, therefore are impossible to have occurred via the transit camps. In The Hoax of the 20th Century by Dr. Arthur Blutz, he flippantly brushes aside these camps where approximately 1.5 million Jews were alleged to have been gassed, because he claims he debunked Auschwitz and these camps were just similar hoaxes. Bunce titled that chapter etc., meaning they're unimportant, and spends very few sentences in the entire book on these extermination camps located in eastern Poland. To be fair, at the time of the hoax's publication, Auschwitz was the popular focus of the Holocaust. Bunce claimed to debunk Auschwitz-Birkenau primarily by claiming the amount of Hungarian Jews alleged transported to Auschwitz were not actually sent there at all, but many hundreds of thousands instead remained in Hungary. Of course, this doesn't explain Treblinka, Belzec, etc., where we now know the names of entire Jewish communities shipped into these sites and were never seen again. Bunce's Hungarian transport denial is disagreed upon by revisionists, Carlo, these guys. But despite thousands of pages of books and articles, no revisionist seems to have an answer to the central issue of where those Jews unable to work and undeniably transported to these locations, even photographed transited to these locations, went rather than the gas chambers at these sites. Holocaust researcher this guy offer a financial reward for proof of one Jew transited to the Russian East, stopping at these places, is out there for anyone who can find even one Jew of the approximately 1.5 million alleged transited through these camps. That fits the proposed revisionist transit camp theory. This potent challenge is proof of how strong the accepted history is and how phenomenally weak and untenable the revisionist/denier transit camp theory is. The extreme end of revisionism, also called Holocaust denial, which denies gassings and mass murders by bullets, is entirely predicated on having the open-minded skeptic ignore the most central issue of the Holocaust. We know Jews able to be used for forced labour were transited in large numbers through Auschwitz to other labour camps and often survived the war. Their existence is often touted by revisionists as proof of a hoax, but actually fits today's official story. But where did these huge amounts of young children, elderly, and those separated forever from their families at Auschwitz and segregated as unable to be used for slave labour elsewhere, go en masse rather than the gas chambers of the crematories? Where did those alleged sent to Treblinka, Belzec, and Sobibor, however you say it, and then to the Russian East go, ignoring the proof of human remains at these sites as deniers do? Revisionists, deniers can't name one of the proposed survivors. The central issue that the National Socialists and the SS execute the elderly, children, and those unable to work in several extermination camps is ignored via diversion tactics. These tactics often choose to instead focus the skeptic on truly absurd eyewitnesses' lies, debunked human fat soap and human skin lampshade rumours, and other post-war propaganda. Some revisionists even claim that the answer to this question is unimportant because the alleged mass murder and cremation are to them impossible. It doesn't matter where the Jews went, they claim. They defiantly claim these Jews definitely weren't killed at their last known earthly locations, though. To come to this conclusion, I did not rely only on existing revisionist material, but have additionally performed thorough research on this myself. I've also visited and documented the relevant locations, Auschwitz, Birkenau, etc., etc. As of now, there is zero hard evidence to support the revisionist transit camp theory, and all evidence points to mass homicidal gassings and mass murder by shootings having occurred. So just before we go on a bit more here, Ted is saying that he found Eric Hunt's video very convincing, and yeah. Well, how come Eric Hunt has done this 180 reversal and has, Eric Hunt knows the information that he presented in that video and yet still has come to this conclusion? So what's going on here? And why, Ted, did you and others not see this? Did you not realise this? Did you not look into this? And this is where, again, critical thinking, but also let's see who the authors are. Let's see what they're actually saying. Because here's another thing. And, part of my research for this, I watched a video about David Irving. And he was actually David Irving's video. You can find it on BitChute. It was his interview in 2009, I think. And in that video, he says that he thinks in that video, this is Irving in 2009, he says that there was no he disputes the idea of Auschwitz-Birkenau being a gassing site, But he says that the Treblinka and Majdanek, how we say it, and those other ones mentioned here were sites where Jews were gassed. And that's David Irving.
So these gassings did occur. If you accept that these papers aren't fake, and I don't believe for a moment they are fake, the gassings did occur in Auschwitz, but on nothing like the scale, which is part of the legend now. The mass marketing scale that was designed in that Madison Avenue meeting back in the early 1970s. It's got to be unique, it's got to be bigger than anybody else's, and then you can make billions out of it. So is David Irving a Holocaust denier? I don't think so, because we now start looking totally elsewhere in Poland. We're looking no longer in Auschwitz, at this Disneyland site in southern Poland. We're looking in eastern Poland, along the River Bug. In eastern Poland, there are 3 or 4 sites which you can collectively describe either as the Bug River camps or as the Operation Reinhard camps. The Jews were being sent to these camps, and before they were being liquidated, they were being robbed of everything they had. It was a plundering operation. And here is where I say I had to cross swords with the main revisionist body. They don't want to believe the Reinhard camps exist. I think the Reinhard camps did exist. And I'm going to set out here very briefly the evidence for the Reinhard camps having existed. I'll tell you the names first. There was Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka. And on top of that came the camp called Majdanek. You can go and visit all these camps in Poland now, but the reason they're not on the tourist route is because there's nothing to see. There's no buildings you can see, no execution walls, no buildings described as crematoria or gas chambers. They're just bald patches in the middle of a forest in each place. And to me, that is far more evocative, far more lonely and sinister when you go into the middle of this forest and suddenly there's a 1 or 2 kilometer square bald patch where nothing seems to have happened. Until you find, for example, at Treblinka, there's a letter in the private papers of Heinrich Himmler who says, when the operation in Treblinka is finished, I want the whole site demolished and removed, nothing must remain. I want the whole site grassed over and a farmhouse, a farmstead built there in its place, which can be given to some Ukrainian to run. If you really know how to look at the private papers of Heinrich Himmler, the chief of the SS, you begin stumbling across documents that have been clearly written as part of a cover-up. We don't have a processing figure for 1943, but we do have the loot figure for 1943, and so you can probably extrapolate to a reasonable kind of ballpark figure for 1943 too, and say it's probably another million. So suddenly, for those 2 years, Operation Reinhard has generated 2.2 million people or more. Now, for a revisionist, this is difficult stuff to swallow. So what do I, as a real historian, after 30 or 40 years' work, fearlessly believe at this stage? I believe the gassings did take place, but the whole thing was an ad hoc operation in these various camps, designed and devised by the local commanders, except for the 3 Reinhard camps, which were built as extermination centers. No denying that. And it's a pity that the Jewish communities around the world have concentrated or latched onto Auschwitz as their Disneyland, because the real operations were done further east. Not much money to be made there, difficult to get to, and nothing to show the tourists, unless they're tourists who are romantic and can hear the sigh of the deceased and departed in the wind that blows through the pine forests.
And Mark Webber, or was it Max Weber? Mark Webber, who was the guy who used to be the Journal for Historical Review, the Holocaust Denialist journal and website, he was the guy behind that. You can also find his interview, and you can find that on YouTube as well, where he says, actually, yeah, there were some gassings. You know, he doesn't say there were as many. He still disputes the 6 million figure, but he's saying, no, there were gassing sites. And he also mentions Treblinka and a couple of the others. He doesn't mention Majdanek, how we say it. But you got David Irving himself saying that, and now you've got Eric Hunt himself as well saying that. My thing to Ted and also others who are like on the fence here or thinking, "Oh, is there something behind any of this?" It's kind of a case of you can see that these people can only go so far unless they're like sort of religiously just dismissing absolutely everything. they can only go so far because the evidence isn't supporting their claim. So that's food for thought. But I would suggest in the future, if you guys are looking into this stuff and you hear something like, oh, you should watch this documentary or whatever, see who wrote it. Is there somebody else refuting this stuff online? Because I actually found this website, the holocaustcontroversies.blogspot.com. For the most part, this is actually a pretty decent website. They've got a search option here. You can find a lot of the counter arguments to what the Holocaust denialists are saying. So have a check out on this website. See if you can see some of the things. They've got things disputing Hitler, the greatest story never told. They've got other ones. I think it's definitely a work in progress, but this is one place you can find. I found it, so you guys can certainly read it and have a go at it and see what you think. But what I'm saying here is that, Ted and others here are they watch one thing and then they're jumping to the conclusion and not thinking critically, not looking behind the scenes, not trying to answer the questions, and then Ted, you're coming to me and going, can you give me the answers? And it's like, well, you can find them yourself. You don't need to ask me. I didn't spend very much time going through all this and going, oh, look, there's a counter argument here. I spent some time, obviously, but I didn't spend it didn't take me like 10 years to find this stuff. It didn't take me that long. So just carrying on a little bit more here, he says, this is Eric Hunt again. And, hats off to the guy. He's come out, he was a Holocaust denier. He actually got arrested. So apparently he grabbed one of the survivors' arms because he wanted to see if they've got the barcode on his arm. And that was assault, and so he got imprisonment. And then he came out with these documentaries, and now he's come out saying that actually he's holding his hand up and saying no, he's no longer a Holocaust denier, and he's come out and he's saying that he was down the rabbit hole. So hats off to the guy. And to be honest, when I was watching his two documentaries on Treblinka and Majdanek, I'm never gonna get that name right. When I was watching that, I was like, this guy, he's actually presenting this well. This is what I said earlier on. He's presenting this well. I don't agree, but he's presenting it well. He's looking at the facts. Okay, he's going off on one about Zionism, but that's I can set that aside. What he's actually saying about, can they smash their way out of the windows at Majdanek, whenever you say it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's actually kind of, that's evidence-based, and he's looking at that critically. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm surprised by this, that, I was expecting blatant propaganda on the, Hitler's, Hitler, the greatest story never told, that sort of thing. And I was actually surprised. And so I'm not surprised that he's actually eventually come to the conclusion, actually, no, this did actually happen. Because he's thinking critically, he's looking at it logically. And there is a video, you can see part of it on YouTube, and you can hear his audio, but there's also a link, and again I might link to it, where he had a 3.5 hour debate, I think it was, with a guy called Fritz somebody, and Fritz is a Holocaust denier, and he's debating Eric Hunt, who's come out and said he's not anymore. And you can hear that debate, and they're actually having this debate back and forth. And it gets to the point where Fritz loses it, and he's like, no, you're, and you must be in with them or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he actually loses it. It's no longer about evidence-based. It's more religious conviction that it mustn't have happened. And Eric Hunt, I'm not saying he did it perfectly, and maybe he could have argued better, but he was quite solid in no, this is evidence, we need evidence, here is the facts, here's the questions. And so, I'm not saying the guy hasn't got his problems. He's still, I'm not sure if he still agrees with the 6 million figure. I'm not entirely sure on that. But hats off to the guy. I will say he was down the rabbit hole, and he's now, to some extent, pulled himself out of it. So for that, I've got to tip my hat to him a little bit. So let's read on here. So he says there is a multitude of witness testimonies of National Socialists themselves, and then Jews, Poles, Russian prisoners of war, and others. I've done a video on the Russian prisoners of war, and that was horrible. Because that's the thing as well, the Nazis and the Holocaust deniers are not denying that they starved millions of Russians. They're not denying that. They're not denying what they did to the Greeks in World War II. They're not denying that. So, the certain crimes are getting away with it. They're fine with them. Oh, but when it comes to the Jews, that's when the Holocaust deniers have a problem. And that's where you can see the sort of illogic there. And then he says there are remains of crematoria, gas chambers, the cremation pits. There are photographs and vast documentary proof these camps were used for extermination. There are human remains at the sites alleged used for large-scale cremation of gassing victims. As I will be often repeating, there are the Jews that were never seen again. Known that they were sent to these sites. No proof of emerging anywhere after being sent to these death camps. He says no primary National Socialist war criminal defendant at the camps with personal knowledge, easily able to prove that the extermination camps were merely transit camps, ever gave that alternate explanation, which is a massive thing. You'd think at least one of them go, oh yeah, it was a transit camp. No. On the contrary, they accepted guilt and did nothing to protest, not even covertly slipping acquitted testimony to a confidant, only to be published after their deaths. Didn't happen. None of that happened. The above two paragraphs are the primary reasons that he accepted that the mass homicidal gassings, shootings, and cremations occurred. So this is an interesting paragraph. So I might read this one in the Hitler voice. The reason skeptics of National Socialist mass murders even first go beyond the skeptical shallow water, most logically or emotionally, decide not to wade past into the deep end of the subject in the first place are numerous. Many of the most powerful Jews in the world, such as Steven Spielberg, these other guys as well, promoting the Holocaust as a new religion, really were involved with manufacturing mini-hoaxes which are rarely ever exposed in the mainstream other than by revisionists. I and many others see it as morally right to oppose these mini-hoaxes, which often target naive children. Just the other day, the Holocaust promotion industry has admitted the 5 million non-Jewish Holocaust victim figure promoted by this guy and taught to the public for years was a total lie that he's going to link to somewhere else. The 5 million figure was repeated for decades, even on the top investigative journalist programs such as PBS's Frontline. Again, mini hoaxes, or is it mistakes? Or is it poetic license? And maybe they shouldn't be doing poetic license. Maybe that's an argument we could be had, but anyway, let's carry on. So, along the way, those rightfully skeptical of mainstream Holocaust falsehoods often find themselves in a community of revisionists which proclaim an extreme form of mass murder denial. From Auschwitz to Treblinka to Babi Yar, these revisionists, often called deniers, genuinely believe Jews were not gassed or shot by the hundreds of thousands. So there's actually a distinction. I didn't realise that. There's a distinction between revisionists who are, I guess, denying certain aspects of it, and then deniers who are the ones who just outright say it was a load of rubbish. So maybe that's a distinction, but I'm not sure I would make that distinction though, because the thing is, calling them revisionists, I've done a video on that, and all historians revise history. That's part of the job. History is constantly being rewritten, and it's not being rewritten in a bad way necessarily. It can be, but it's being rewritten in a way that we're getting more accurate with it. So every time we open up a document, we're trying to figure out the truth. We're kind of reassessing, re-evaluating, and coming to a newer, hopefully better conclusion. That's the idea, and then the debate's in there as well. So revising history is actually a good thing. So these guys deliberately called themselves revisionists to legitimize, or try and legitimize, what they were doing. So I don't like the term revisionist. If you want to make a distinction and say, let's say outright deniers, and then skeptics, maybe that's a better way of putting it. But I don't like the idea of calling them revisionists and deniers at the same time. That to me just doesn't. They're both the same, if that makes sense. So it doesn't. They're both denying it. So I think more like skeptics might be better. But we can discuss that. So he says, at this time I realised I was misled by the extreme Holocaust deniers. Although I began my quest exposing politically incorrect truths I stand by today, such as the falsehoods of the Holocaust promotion industry, including fantasy atrocity fiction in this one, moonwalking to the edge of a flaming pit of fire during the night. I don't know that one. And Steven Spielberg's Oscar-winning hoax of a documentary, The Last Days. I was later persuaded to support an extreme form of mass murder denial, which I now reject as untrue. So there you go. He says, I now oppose denial of these massacres as destructive and counterproductive to revisionism's own claimed aims, which are supposedly to repeal anti-free speech laws. Now, to be fair, I agree with that first part. Anti-free speech laws, let's get rid of them. I think it's stupid having anti-free speech laws. That's just, you're going down the route of totalitarianism, right? You're like, where are the Nazis that I want to punch? Well, maybe you should look harder in the mirror. Then he says, restore nationalism. Yeah, let's not do that. And a positive sense of identity to Germany and the West. How about let's not do that either? I like the way Germany and the West, and I disagree. I think the Germans, at least in the way that they were back in World War II era, and if not earlier, they weren't Western. So, even if they claim they were, because, for starters, they're more like in Central Europe, not West, but also they didn't embrace liberalism, which I would say is a distinctive characteristic of the Western civilizations. So, I'm not saying none of them did. Obviously, Mises did, although he was Austrian. But clearly, they didn't embrace liberalism. So how can you say that they're part of the West? Anyway, that's a debate for another day. But I think there's a distinction between Germany and the West. And he says also to end the Holocaust guilt complex, which has infected Europeans. It's not infected me. I'm not in. Well, I am in it. Now that we're out of the EU, am I classed as European? Maybe. Okay, as a resident of Airstrip 1, probably not. So maybe that's why I don't feel guilty for something that I didn't commit. I've concluded the claim that Jews were not mass murdered at Auschwitz and all these other places and elsewhere using poison gas and bullets is a false conspiracy theory. The main reasons I ever gave Nazi mass murder denial such a complete examination are the numerous lies of the murderous, evil Soviet regime. So it's not just me saying this, guys. Jewish eyewitnesses, exaggeration and falsehoods, and other wartime propaganda which never seems to be acknowledged or revised by an ever-growing Holocaust promotion industry. I think it is. There's a lot of books on the evil Soviet regime. Jewish eyewitnesses may have got things wrong, but that's just part of the problem with primary sources. Wartime propaganda, okay. And it never seems to be acknowledged or revised by ever-growing... No, it is. I know there are problems with it, but they are being revised. So, but I can understand why he fell into this trap. The revisionists themselves have played a key role in revising the propaganda against tremendous persecution for which they should be commended. That's him saying that, not me. But unfortunately they have gone too far in denying mass murders at several known extermination sites. I trusted many of the advanced revisionists with years of research behind them to have come to the correct conclusions. After years of my own research, it's very clear that those who care about the truth have been misled. the revisionists, the denialists are coming out with a lot of stuff in the YouTube comment section, in other videos, in online, in BitChute, etc. They're spouting their stuff, and having somebody who's actually been down the rabbit hole come out of the rabbit hole and go, he's got the answers. He's got the questions that, because I wouldn't have thought to ask this question. Where did they go once they got to these camps? I wouldn't have thought of that. So, well, maybe I would at some point, but not yet. So this guy has been down the rabbit hole. He's got an advantage here that many of us probably wouldn't have had. So in that sense, we need people like this. We need people who have been in those circles, groups, to come out of it and be like, right, this is what I used to believe, this is now what I do believe, because that gives a lot of power to the mainstream argument, even if it is flawed, even if there are issues with it. He's brought this out, he's presenting evidence, and he has tried to debate some of the Holocaust denialists who are now condemning him as well. He's been ostracized by them. There's a website where the Holocaust denialists are meant to be debating the Holocaust, and they have kicked him off that site. So, they want a free and open, honest debate, and they're against censorship and the anti-denialist laws, and then they go ahead and censor this guy. And he's got a whole blog explaining that, how hypocritical that is. And it's true. So, should we forgive him? Is it once a Nazi, always a Nazi? Is it once a Holocaust denialist, always a Holocaust denialist? Should we ostracize him from society? Or is he actually somebody who's very useful now? Because he's been down the rabbit hole. By the way, he's calling out apparently a lot of the Holocaust denialists are also flat earthers. He says that somewhere. I did read it before. Just to point out, guys, there is actually a section on Treblinka itself, and he spends this part going through the evidence for the massacres at Treblinka. He shows the remnants of a mass cremation pit at Treblinka. There's a picture of it. He also talks about his video where he criticised Caroline Coles, and you can read this yourself. I'll just read bits of it. But basically, she's done more archaeological digs since then, has identified burial pits at the place of Treblinka. I believe this is Treblinka 2. So you can see them on here, the yellow dots. These are probable sites for cremation pits. And Eric Hunt has also said that, so in this section, he basically talks about his video. And he calls out Coles and her behaviour. He talks about the chief rabbi of Poland, and his name is there. And he talks about all that. He says, regarding my analysis of the TV show and Treblinka in general, in the video of the Treblinka archaeology hoax, there are aspects of which I stand behind, but parts and the conclusion I do not. For instance, insinuating that the bone fragments Coles picked up on the grounds of Treblinka 2 were the same cremated remains of those shown scattered earlier by a Jewish family is clearly false. The remains scattered by that family were mostly, if not all, ash. I did not intend to deliberately mislead, but offer an alternative theory and push for a real archaeological dig to end the controversy. I now believe that alternate theory to be false. And he does say he stands behind other parts, like what he said about Vasily Grossman, and I would encourage you guys to read this, but he says overall, to believe that there are no mass graves and cremation pits at Treblinka would force one to believe that Coles and her entire team of archaeologists were lying about finding massive grave sites and in on the conspiracy. And he just basically says it's not right. So I would encourage you guys to read this, but this basically shows that not all, but most of what he said in the Treblinka video was incorrect. Now, unfortunately, he doesn't mention Madonic at any point. He mentions it, but he doesn't actually refute what he said in that video. So I would encourage, if Eric Hunt is out there, I would really encourage him to refute what he said in the Madonic video, but otherwise he definitely goes back and says the Treblinka stuff isn't right. So there you go. He says, overall, I'm not as upset as deniers as this article may make it appear. I don't think any of them acted consciously to deceive. As, for example, this guy, many of them really are selfless truth seekers. Many have generously helped me get through life as a persecuted outcast. So there you go, he's already outcast. Even though they were wrong about denying mass gassings and shootings, they were doing something that they felt necessary to change the disastrous course of Holocaust guilt that has had on Germany, Western civilization, Palestine, and the world. They weren't mindless consumers and materialists like most sheeple. Dear Eric Hunt, please read Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, and America's Great Depression by Murray Rothbard. You'll see why when you read it. He says they were courageous and right in many aspects in the face of overwhelming persecution. I will likely still remain friends with many of them for the rest of his life. If these people give up their extreme denial of National Socialist mass murders, they can reorganize into a more useful form. They can protest the biased school curriculums. Yippee. The anti-free speech laws. Yippee. They can help change the culture at large. Probably not. Let's not do that. Forget that. Everyone's an individual. He says parents don't want their kids to be shown piles of naked corpses and be told that their people are responsible for all the evil in the world. You know, I don't agree with that. Their people, that's just the socialism coming into it. Their people, we are not groups, we're individuals. So, yeah, I disagree with the their people thing, but showing the Holocaust in school isn't necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion. He says there should be an organisation reconstituted against the insidious form of brainwashing. Yeah, there should be an organisation or just individuals calling out socialism at every moment of the time, but hey-o. He says after this moment, however, he will hold any denial leaders personally responsible for any naive people that get prosecuted and persecuted for denying National Socialist mass murders. He says he'll hold them responsible for continuing to mislead these naive people and egg them on into life-destroying positions. They have no information which can help these people to show a judge or jury to help them get acquitted. On the contrary, they are setting up others for prosecution due to their own stubborn refusal to admit they were wrong on this key issue. If the extreme deniers realise there is nothing major left to revise and stop the denial of mass gassings and shootings, they can be very useful. Many of their accomplishments in leading to the grey zone where truth resides may be looked upon with admiration in the history books yet to be written. If not, they should be considered dangerous, irrational deceivers like the Paul McCartney deniers and flat earthers they collaborate with. I don't know the Paul McCartney thing, but okay. He says he wanted this article to mostly focus on the logic behind his conclusion. He will be posting additional articles to explain what took so long, how he got to that point, and some of the other thoughts on the Holocaust denial debate shortly. There's a lot more to say, but this article is long enough. I don't know if he's written any more since this. If he has, please let me know. So let me just go back to Ted's original question here. So he's shown a video of Eric Hunt. I think I can confidently say that Eric Hunt has come out against that video as well as the other ones. Now, he didn't, in that blog article, he didn't specifically go through the Majdanek concentration camp, but he did and say why his original conclusions were wrong. He did dispute what he said about the Treblinka stuff, although he still said that that documentary was stupid, which I agree. Ted says that I should survey more scholarly works on Holocaust denial. Look, depending how this video goes, I will, if I do a video on the Holocaust in the future, I will be looking into the denialist debate as much as the mainstream debate, because I want to, like this video, I want to see both sides and see what is going on, and then knowing both sides, I can then go which one is right, or maybe both are wrong, and maybe there's something in the middle, or actually the Holocaust denialists are all wrong, or maybe the mainstream's all wrong. Who knows? So I want to approach this as open-minded as possible, but also as critical as possible. So I've got what is it, Hitler's War by David Irving. I've got another book as well, which I'm not going to mention. So it's not like I'm against looking into this stuff. I wouldn't blindly go into it without thinking critically, so I can assure you that. And you're right that just because the Germans wanted to remove the Jews from their nation doesn't necessarily mean that they therefore turned to murder, but they did, right? So, there was the Madagascar plan, as you rightly pointed out. They did emigrate, Jews to other countries, but then there came a point where they couldn't do that anymore. And so they couldn't do that. They couldn't remove the Jews. So what did they turn to? Murder. So, and that's the deal with the slowly moving, what did Kershaw call it? Cumulative radicalization. So they started off going, okay, we'll try and remove most of the Jews, and then they couldn't do that. Okay, we'll ship them to Madagascar. Okay, we can't do that. We'll ship them to the East. Oh, we can't do that because we lost the war in the East. Therefore, murder time, right? That's how it went down. But that doesn't mean, of course, they weren't murdering along the way. They murdered people throughout the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. But, generally it was more of it wasn't, Hitler didn't outline in Mein Kampf that he was going to have bunch of Auschwitz and a bunch of other camps. He didn't do that. It slowly became that through cumulative radicalization as things progressed. He also said that the Russian Revolution was to do with the Jews. I don't have time to go through that, but no, so Lenin himself, he had a Jewish great grandparent, so therefore he was full Jewish apparently, and also. Okay, yeah, Trotsky was Jewish. Stalin wasn't, I don't think. And that's why he murdered Jews after the war, possibly during the war, and even killed Jews. Jews died in the Russian Revolution, not just by the White Armies, but by the Red Armies too. And I've been over this before. So there's an issue there. And yeah, I get it, a lot of the Jews were socialists. And there's reasons for that, because the Jews were forced via old-fashioned anti-Semitism. They were forced into positions of banking, and so as a result, and minting and shop ownership and stuff like that. So they ended up becoming the first capitalists. And obviously, capitalism is the greatest economic system we've ever had. It pulled billions of people out of poverty, and so as a result of that, they were the first people to really get going, and became the first intellectuals and the first whatever. So there was a lot of Jewish intellectuals, and people who are intellectually minded but don't have very great critical thinking skills end up believing in socialism. That's what ended up happening there. And this is why Mises and Rothbard were both intellectuals and are both Jewish, even though they didn't come to the conclusion that socialism works. And that's why they're hated. And that's why some of the Marxists call Mises, who was a Holocaust survivor, by the way, because he fled from Austria and the Germans burnt his library. So he was actually technically a Holocaust survivor. That's why they call him a fascist, because they don't like the Jews. So, you've got to understand that, yeah, a lot of the Jews in the past were intellectuals because they were forced into positions which then just happened to end up becoming the first capitalists, and capitalism really works. So you've got to understand that it's not because of their quote unquote race, right? Okay, so I said that the Holocaust deniers know that the Holocaust happened and that they're only denying it to attack the Marxists. Not all of them are doing that, so you can obviously find exceptions to the rule there. And you say it's not in your position either. You genuinely found the Eric Hunt video convincing, and other videos as well. And I can see where you're like, it's being leveraged by Jewish interest groups. And it's like, yeah, but again, one of the criticisms of Britain, Britain's done lots of horrible things in the past. Therefore, all British people are X. No, okay? all British men like football and drinking beer. Like, no, I don't like football. I've got better things to do in my time than watch some people kick a ball around a field. I don't drink beer, I drink ale. It's a big difference. And I don't drink very often. You get the point. What London does, what the Queen does, what Parliament does, what the British military do, what they did in the past is not what I've done. It's not what other people have done, around me. I've not committed a mass murder crime, even if the British government has. So you're linking, or people are linking, the British with the British government. That's not the same thing. And the same is happening here. You're saying the Jewish interest groups, and you're thinking it's some sort of monolithic entity where all the Jews communicate via, what's that called? Where they telepathically, that's the one. They're all telepathically linked to each other. No, that's not. I can link to your videos where there's people showing you that no, the Jews back in the day when the Judea supposedly declared war on Germany, you'll actually find that there is a video where it explains that there was actually multiple Jewish interest groups all calling out each other, going, no, we shouldn't do this, no, we should do that, or this group did say that, or they were going to say that, and then the Express actually published it as if they had said it, even though they hadn't. And then other groups are going, what are you doing? You can't do. And then they were all debating amongst themselves. They weren't a monolithic entity, which is what yourself and others are coming to the conclusion that they are. So you need to stop that. I mean, if they all can telepathically link to each other, please let me know how they're doing that, because that'd be interesting. You're also saying that they're extracting billions of dollars out of Germany and they're establishing Israel at the expense of the Palestinians. So if something happens in the past and people today exploit it, let's say that they do that, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? It may have happened and now they're maybe exploiting it, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. So let's think about this. Let's stop associating what people are doing today and the past together. Yes, there are issues today, but that is a separate issue. If you want to call out what they're doing today, that's up to you. I don't know enough about those subjects. My history is in the 1940s. So sticking to the 1940s and the 30s and the 20s, let's just go back to that a second. What they're doing today has no relevance on what they did in the past. So again, you're conflating the two there. You say, isn't it sick that young children in school have this exploitative belief put in their heads with propaganda videos featuring horror music and piles of dead bodies that are actually Dresden bombing victims? I mean, I don't know about the Dresden bombing victims thing, in terms of them showing that to young school children and saying that is the Holocaust. If that is happening, then they need to be called out, because that's not true. Obviously using Dresden bombing victims as a Holocaust victims is not the same thing. They need to use the actual photos from the Holocaust. But it's not necessarily sick. I think it's more sick that YouTube is censoring my video on the Greeks, the Holocaust in Greece, because they don't want to put anyone who's under 18, they don't want anyone to show it. I think it's actually better that people do learn history, and that there shouldn't be a restriction on, or an age limit on what you can and cannot learn. I'm sorry, you're under 18, therefore we're not going to teach you how to tie your shoelaces. No, you can learn this stuff in school, and I don't see the problem. The issue isn't this stuff, it's actually the school system. I wouldn't even recommend going to school, but that's a whole other topic. My point here is, though, there shouldn't be an age restriction on history videos. There shouldn't be any censorship on history videos. So, you're calling out censorship in terms of, you can't say certain stuff online and whatever else, and then you're going ahead and put in censorship in schools. No. So you say you deny the 6 million figure because it's what the evidence shows, but it doesn't. The evidence shows the opposite. Now, I'm not saying the 6 million figure isn't disputed. I've seen a range of statistics regarding that, and I'm not going to comment on that just yet because I've not done enough reading on that. But, one of the things that a lot of the Holocaust deniers will say, you can't say less than 6 million, and yet it's actually more like 5 to 6 million. So you can say less than that. So it's a load of garbage. What the Holocaust deniers are trying to do is put it to zero. It's more than zero. So you're saying that I said that some countries ban Holocaust denial because Marxist professors aren't good at refuting Holocaust denial. Yeah, they're not. This is the problem. I had trouble, as I say, I had to use a VPN to get around the restrictions to find out these videos and what they actually said. That's not good. We need a free and open, honest debate. And that's not me defending Holocaust denialism. I don't want to defend it. This is me saying there needs to be a free and open... You cannot have history without a free and open, honest debate. If there's no debate, there's no history. And the debate is happening, but it's so restricted, it's not free enough. And so it needs to be... And this is where, I will agree that this needs to be more out and open and that's a controversial issue. I'm sure I'm going to get criticism here, but I shouldn't have to go onto dodgy websites to find the arguments that these people are making just so that I can refute them. And I don't think any other Marxist professor or non-Marxist professor should have to do that either. And yet that's the way we're doing it. And because it's hard to find what the Nazis and the denialists are actually saying, it's hard to refute them because we don't know what they're saying. So, and this is where the Eric Hunt thing comes in. It's like he actually came out with this blog and actually explained it all. And it's like, that's what we need. And I think if more people, if this wasn't such a taboo sort of, censorship issue, and we weren't trying to find out where these people are and then go to their websites. If it was in a public forum, if it was open and honest, as I say, it's more likely that we'll find more people like Eric Hunt who are able and willing and come to, oh wait, he was down the rabbit hole, but then he's come out of the rabbit hole because he realised his mistake. It's like we'll have more people like that, and that will undermine massively the denialist argument, because Eric Hunt knows perhaps more than I do, and probably way more than I do, on the Holocaust itself, and he's come to that conclusion that he was wrong and that the Holocaust did happen, etc. So you can imagine what would happen if we had an open and honest debate. And he says, one, as mentioned previously, you don't need to murder people to get a racial state, but I think you do. He says, two, having a motivation doesn't mean you act on it. Okay, so Hitler had the motivation of going east. He said that in Mein Kampf, in addition to murdering the Jews. And he went east and he murdered the Jews. So, yeah, he clearly was motivated to do that. And he also acted on it. Three, he says he's never seen a discussion of Holocaust factuality that involved a discussion of whether Hitler was socialist. Yeah, because the National Socialists know that Hitler was a socialist. Unless the dumb skinheads who, are the grunts of the National Socialist ideal. The people with the swastikas on the forehead, sat in jails, are not the real intellectual national... Not Hitler, Goebbels, Himmler, none of these people had swastikas on their foreheads. They were the intellectuals of the National Socialists. Where have those intellectuals gone? National Socialism is not dead. It's not completely killed. There are people out there who are National Socialists. Where are the intellectuals? Where are these people? I'll tell you where they are. They're in the parties. Labour Party. They're there. You go and look. They are there. Anti-Semitism is rife in the Labour Party of the UK. They're in the left-wing parties. The Democratic Party of the United States. They're also in the Republican Party. They're also in the Conservative Party. Because conservatism is also left-wing, as I keep saying. They are socialist. They are in with the state. They are part of the establishment. The smart Nazis aren't the ones who are sat in prisons with swastikas in their foreheads. They're the ones going, oh, we need racial equality and genderism and all this other stuff. That's who are doing that. That's why the left are so insecure with themselves that they're pushing it out to everybody else. Everyone else must be a Nazi. And that's why I say the reason you cannot find Nazis is because you're not looking at yourself hard enough in the mirror. That's the reason why, because the left are full of Nazis. That's where the socialists are. That's where the National Socialists are. So that's my point here. So yes, you might not have seen that discussion because the National Socialists or the Holocaust deniers know what socialism is. Most of them do anyway. You say, I don't think the reasons for banning Holocaust denial involved the failure of specifically Marxist professors. Maybe not. Not specifically, but I think that's a big part of it. It's also illogical and immoral to have the state declare what historical facts are true under penalty of law. Agreed. I agree with you on that point. That is 100% true. The state should not be involved. I don't believe there should be much of a state, if any at all. If there is, it should be voluntary. But that's another debate for an entire another day. No other historical facts are regulated by legislators in this way. Oh, really? Hess. Admiral Canaris. Operation Keelhaul. What else is there? Yes, they are regulated and or suppressed by the Gestapo. Everything else is allowed in the light of free inquiry and debate. No, it isn't, mate. No, it isn't. This unenlightened tyranny is only possible through mass child indoctrination. Yeah. When you're referring to the state being we must bow down to the state and pay our taxes like good little serfs. Yeah, you're right, yeah. But don't forget, if you're a socialist and you're denying the Holocaust, which is what most of you are doing, you guys are also wanting the tyranny, because socialism is about the social group, right? Got to help grandma and all that, right? That's socialism. Because you're saying that the individual doesn't matter and your individual choices don't matter. What matters is the good of the community, the Volksgemeinschaft, right? So that's where this is coming from. A declining critical thinking skills. Exactly. What do I always ask? Aber ist das wirklich der Fall, right? And there you go, outsized power of Jewish interest groups. Stop it. There's more than just Jews out there in the world. I say the reason some countries ban Holocaust denial is because the alarming power Jewish lobbyists have. No, just stop. Just stop. It's not just them. They are a factor maybe, but again, they're not. It's not a monolithic group. And you say we're taught to believe something scary as school children, and it can impede us as adults from critically evaluating evidence. It can, or you can not, because if you think critically and you go down the rabbit hole, you may find that there are discrepancies in the rabbit hole and then come out of it, just like Eric Hunt did, and probably others as well. Like Mark Webber is no longer denying the Holocaust as much as he did. David Irving, as I say, 2009, he came out and said actually there were death camps and there were gassings. So there you go. There, he says there will be a temptation to look for an easy dismissal of things that we don't want to believe in. What, like the Holocaust? Like you don't want to believe in the Holocaust, so you're dismissing it. You haven't done the research. You can tell this because you, as I say, I looked into Eric Hunt and properly and actually looked into this. You didn't. So you haven't done enough reading on this subject. So you say you encouraged me to be skeptical not only towards a reviled minority position, but also towards sources that affirm what we were conditioned to believe. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But what happens if we are looking critically and skeptical of those sources, but then go, actually, they're right? What then? Is that because I'm paid by some Jewish interest group, or is it just because I'm thinking critically? You know, this is where I've had Nazis in the past, and still do, so they call me Jewish names. They say I'm being paid by the Jews. This is where this is going to be an issue now, because I'm going to have my other critics go, oh, he's paid by the Holocaust deniers, because Ted is the one Holocaust denier that sent me money, so therefore it must be. And then there'll probably be others, because this is the thing as well. Eric Hunt has been accused of being threatened by the Jews and paid off by the Jews. Well, clearly, Ted, you must also be a secret Zionist or something, and it's all an inside job. That'll be another thing. That'll probably be in the comment section as well. There'll be 1,000,001 conspiracy theories now because of this video. It's just stupid. You know, this is. I can't even imagine what the comments are going to be like. I might even have to turn them off. Not because I like censorship, but because just the subject, it's going to be a disaster. Ted, all I'm saying is that, yeah, okay, when it comes to, if I do make another video on this, I will promise you, I will think critically, I will look at both sides of the argument, etc. I do that anyway, but I think you need to as well, and you need to read that article by Eric Hunt. You need to watch those videos that I mentioned. I would encourage you to do more reading. mainstream, not just non-mainstream, because it seems that you have got the biased perspective and you've not done the critical thinking yourself to the extent that you need to do. So this is a long video, I think, so I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. Oh, what is this? What are the comment section going to be like? Oh, no. Bye for now.